I met Dr. Jacobs through something he posted online. So this is a perfect example why it's important for if you have a message to be online and to share that with the world. And so thankfully, he's done it in a number of different ways. And in fact, he's an author, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. His bio says that Barry Jacobs, PsyD, or Doctor of Psychology, is a clinical psychologist. He's a family therapist and a healthcare consultant, a former magazine journalist. He's also the author of The Emotional Survival Guide for Caregivers, Looking After Yourself and Your Family While Helping an Aging Parent, and co-author with his wife, Julia L. Meyer, Doctor of Psychiatrist, AARP Meditations for Caregivers, Practical, Emotional, and Spiritual Support for You and Your Family. And also the AARP Love and Meaning After 50, the 10 Challenges to Great Relationships and How to Overcome Them. And the book that I'm going to give away today, the AARP Caregiver Answer book. He's also written a self-help column for caregivers for AARP.org since 2013. And I'd like to ask him to share that link with us so I can share it with you. We can put it in the chat. He's a member of the board of the Caregiver Action Network, a national family caregiver advocacy and support organization, and a former director of behavioral sciences for the Krauser Health Family Medicine Residency. He maintains a psychotherapy practice in Media, Pennsylvania, specializing in supporting individuals and their caregivers. For 7 years, he was the primary caregiver for his stepfather with Alzheimer's disease and his mother with vascular dementia. So I know he has a lot to share with us today. He has a very interactive, engaging presentation, and I'm excited to share that with you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barry Jacobs.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you all for being here tonight. It's really my honor to join you. Um, as you heard, I'm a psychologist, and I work with a lot of different family caregivers. I write a lot, I speak a lot, but you know what? The most important thing is that I spent 7 years as a caregiver because most of what I know about caregiving was from taking care of my stepfather and taking care of my mom. And earlier in life, I took care of my dad when he had brain cancer. So, like all of you, I've learned on the job, and we all have a lot to share with one another. So what I like to make these, I have a presentation. I'm going to pull up my slides in a moment, but I like to make these presentations as much as interactive as possible because I think it's fun, more fun that way. And I'm hoping, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm hoping you're going to feel comfortable answering some of these questions. And tonight's topic is one that I've dealt with a lot in my own life. As you'll hear, I'll tell a little bit about my own family, but it's for caring for someone who doesn't want help, right? Not because sometimes if we're caring for a parent, say, or a sibling, and they're declining in some way, and we think that they need help, but they don't want the help because they don't want to accept that they're declining, and so it becomes a little bit of a struggle to care for someone who doesn't want help. I'm hoping that this is a topic that resonates with some of you as we go through this. So I'm going to talk specifically about aging parents, but really this applies to lots of people who don't want help. I'm going to talk about pride, minimization, and resistance because three different factors that come into play to explain why someone might not want help, and how if you try to force help on someone, basically it turns into a little bit of a power struggle where you're trying to force them to accept help and they're trying to ward off that help, and that's a really bad conflict. And so instead, we'll talk a little bit about how do you ally with the person who needs care to help them live the way they want to live, so that they don't see you as an adversary, but they see you as somebody who's on their side, helping them live as well as they can. And then ultimately, if someone doesn't want to help, doesn't want care, you have to accept that, and you can't, as the Serenity Prayer says, we have to accept what we cannot change, which I believe is the most difficult thing there is in life, because all of us want to make a difference, but sometimes we have to accept that the people in our lives who we are worrying about, they don't want our care, and we can't force it on them. Um, What I'm going to be talking about tonight is based on a number of different articles I've written. I hear are links to two of those articles. One appeared in November in The Guardian, where I told the story about my mom, who, as you'll hear in a minute, she didn't want me to care for her. And then I've written for other publications as well. So I hope this is going to be interesting. So my first and then I'm sorry. Here is actually the cover of the book that Teresa just gave away. This is a book that came out in July of last year, so it's about 10 months old now. And what the book is 150 questions and answers about caregiving on all different aspects of caregiving to help you with caring for parents, caring for siblings, caring or dealing with siblings, caring for spouses, dealing with doctors, dealing with insurance companies, managing finances. So those are just some of the topics we cover in this book. So for Tika, who got a copy of this book, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's helpful to you. Um, so we're a small group, and if you're comfortable putting in the chat, or if you'd rather unmute, you could do that too. But on a scale of 1 to 10, and in which I'm assuming everybody here is a caregiver. So on a scale of 1 to 10, and I should say where 1 is happy and 10 is resentful, how would you rate the person for whom you are providing care? Are they very happy about the care? In which case, it's going to be a very low number. But if they're very unhappy about receiving care, it's going to be a very high number. So I'm going to take a look at the chat and see what some of you may have put. I see Anthony put a 7. That suggests the person you're caring for really doesn't want to receive care all that much. Anybody else have a number that they want to add in the chat? Otherwise, it's just going to be, all right. So Celia says 2. So the person you're caring for is being pretty gracious about it. Barbara says 3. Same thing. Um, and Teresa says, I'm a former caregiver, and I'm going to say 5. So someone who was right in the middle there. Maybe they didn't really want to accept help, but they were gracious about it. And Mildred says 9. So 9 is probably the ballpark my mom was in, not wanting to receive care, basically saying, I don't need that. I don't need this. You have your own life. Leave me alone. Let's see who else. Joyce is 7. So we got a range of numbers here, which suggests that there are people who we're caring for who are very gracious about receiving care, and there are others who are not. So let's talk a little bit more. I have a second question for you. Um, if the person you are helping doesn't want to receive care, why not? So Mildred put a 9, Anthony had a 7, I think Joyce had a 7. So the folks you're caring for really don't want to accept help. Why not? Why don't they want to accept help? And then the second part of this question is, how do you respond if they don't accept help? So everyone, it's not just Joyce, Mildred, and Anthony who can answer this. Anybody can answer these things. If someone doesn't want to receive care in your life, why not? And what do you do? So, all right, I'm starting to see people put things in the chat. Thank you very much. Um, and Celia says, we started at 10, I left, and now 2. Okay, there you go. So in other words, Celia, you took a stand, and that person basically said, all right, now they're gonna buckle down and accept the care. Mildred says, don't think they need it, but are always asking for things. Okay. So they don't think they need it, but in fact, they do need it. And so you have to kind of help them accept care. Joyce, I think you're putting your finger on a couple things that are very important. Pride, the person who is receiving care has a lot of pride and embarrassment. So to receive care, to need to receive care is embarrassing to them. And that, I think, is really the nub of this. And that's what a lot of people feel. Teresa says because he was in denial about his limitations. So the person didn't believe that they had the limitation that they believed. Maybe they thought they could drive perfectly safely when they were really a terror on the road. Anthony says, my wife is in her latter 50s and has been officially disabled for 7 years. It's been difficult for her to accept her condition, has generally been because she's been generally self-sufficient. And I get that. I mean, the people who are on receiving end of care, all of them would rather be givers than receivers. Most of us in life would rather be givers than receivers. It makes us feel good to give to someone to make them feel better. It doesn't feel so good, on the other hand, to have to receive care, to be, have to feel obliged, have to feel beholden to someone who's caring for us all the time. It makes us feel less than. And so most people don't want to be on the receiving end of care. And yet, that unfortunately sometimes happens in life because of disability or because of age or both. So great. So you kind of get the gist of what we're talking about tonight. So let me share my own personal story. So this is a picture from 2017. This is me and my mom. My mom at that time was 85 years old. This is actually a month before she died, and she looked pretty good, I think, in this photo. And actually, the two of us look like we are the happiest and closest mother and son you could imagine. But in fact, my mother and I fought like the Dickens through the whole time that she had vascular dementia. Um, it went on for years. I she needed I believe that she needed somebody to stay with her in her home. And she didn't want anybody, and it took us a lot of struggling back and forth to help her accept having people come into her home and to help take care of her. My mother tended to fall a lot. And on occasion, she broke bones when she fell, but she did not want to use her walker because the walker, in her mind, felt like, to use the walker felt weak to her. So she didn't want to do that. So my mom was, if I had to rate her, I would say a 9 or a 10, or maybe I'd even put her at an 11. She was tough. And I had a struggle to help her stay safe. And so that became a big, big issue. So why do people not want to receive care? And I'm just going to kind of share some things that I've heard over the years. I think probably every single one of these is going to be familiar to you. So some, people, as Teresa says, they're in denial. I don't need anyone's help. I'm fine. I can do everything myself. And in fact, that may have been true once upon a time, but it's not true anymore. Or someone says, as Anthony said about his wife, I've always taken care of myself. I've always been self-sufficient. I don't like the idea of having to depend on other people, right? It makes me feel bad. And so I have always prided myself in taking care of myself, and I still want to take care of myself as much as I can. And then there are people who say, I don't want to lose my independence because if I need care and I have to depend on you to give care, that means somehow I'm losing my dependence and my sense of self. I'm losing my independence, and that doesn't feel good. Or people say, I don't want to burden others. I tell you what, if I had $1 for every time in my career I've heard people use the B word, the burden word, I would have been a rich man a long, long time ago because none of us want to burden other people. It makes us feel terrible if we're burdening other family members. And so oftentimes the people on the receiving end of care are worrying that they're burdening us. They're burdening their adult children. They're burdening their spouses. And so we have to be very sensitive to that and make sure that they understand that they're not burdens to us. And then there are folks who say, I don't want others to control me. If I'm going to depend on you, and then I don't want you to run my life. I don't want you to tell me what I can eat and what time I have to get up and what time I go to bed and what TV shows I can watch. That's not, I don't want to lose my independence and have you control me. And then, unfortunately, other people I've heard say, no one really wants to help me anyway. So it's almost like they don't believe that others want to provide care for them. They don't feel like they're worth it. They don't feel like people care enough about them. So what do you think? And you can put something in the chat or you can unmute. Does this sound like, are these quotes that I have here, do they ring true to people? Are they things that you've heard as well?
I think they ring true, a lot of them. What's interesting is that some of them happened here, and then next week some of the other ones happened, at the same person. It's like they move from one side of the continuum, like from the person that moved from an 8 to the 2 or 7, like that. They move.
Yeah,
They
no, I think that makes sense. I mean, there are people who some weeks feel like I do need help me, please, and there are others say, get away from me. I can do this myself. Right? They may go back and forth. Then I guess can get kind of kind of confusing. Like, are you supposed to come forward and help them, or are you supposed to stand back and let them do it on their own? Anthony says, my wife is, whoops, I missed, and they go down a little further. I'm reading what you wrote before.
And he has his
Um,
hand raised.
all right, please go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm so diplomatic. Um, I've heard on your list, I've heard pretty much all of those at some point in time or other. But you also, before you started the list, one of the things I know for my wife is like she's always been the person caring for others, right? Not so much in a illness kind of way, but just, emotionally and otherwise. And so she was used to being that person. And then now to flip it all the way over. But I think the other one that you hit on though too is I don't want to be a burden to others, especially to me. And then one of the things she used to say, I'm gonna say this and be quiet. She used to say in the beginning stages was, "You didn't sign up for this," which I my response is yes, I did, but we've gotten beyond that at this point now.
Yeah, we say our marriage vows, we say in sickness and in health, right? And that it's not just all like, it's not just like we don't marry someone just for all the good times. We marry them for life. We marry the good and the bad, all the stuff that goes on. Thank you, Anthony. Those are great comments. So, and Tiffany says, my mom was a nurse and took care of so many. And when her health was declining, she had a hard time giving up her independence. She was always saying she could do things herself. She didn't want to be a burden to her kids. Sounds like your mom did a lot of good for people in this world, and yet it was very hard for her to be on the receiving end of care, just like we're saying. And I'm hoping that she found a way to accept care graciously rather than fight the people who are trying to care for her. Any other thoughts before we go on? Okay. Well, let me share the next slide. And here's another, by the way, another photograph of me and my mom. I used to bring her lunch. She was in the nursing home at the end. I was bringing her lunch, and she would, no matter what I would bring her, she wouldn't like it. You know, like I would try to get her exactly what she wanted, but it was never the sandwich wasn't exactly what she would want. So she became kind of very, she didn't like being there. She didn't like the fact that I was bringing her a sandwich. She didn't like that I was visiting her because I was burden, I was being a burden. Excuse me, she was being a burden to me. And so we'd have lots of these lunches where I'd be cleaning up after her, and she would be unhappy, and I would be kind of unhappy. So didn't know it wasn't always so nice. Um, so I think we talked a little bit about. I believe it was Joyce or maybe Tiffany who put in the chat about pride and embarrassment. So it really is healthy for people to have pride in who they are. That's what we all want. We all want to feel proud of ourselves. We all want the people in our life who we love to feel proud of themselves for the people that they are, for what they've accomplished in their lives. But feeling proud shouldn't be the reason we reject help in order to save face, because then it's like we're doing something, we're making pride an obstacle to getting care that we may need. And so Teresa mentioned denial. Denial would be someone who said, I don't have any problems. I don't have dementia. I don't have Parkinson's. I don't know what you're talking about. I can get around perfectly fine. That's denial. A cousin of denial is minimization. And that would be someone who says, I'm a little bit forgetful, but I'm not so bad. Or they would say, I can walk pretty well with a walker. I maybe just need a little bit of help, and I'm okay, right? They admit that they have some limitations, they have a problem with their walking or with their thinking, but they minimize it, so they make light of it. And that's another way to save face. As I said, it's similar to denial. And so when people don't want to receive help, what do they do? Because in order to save their sense of self, they'll say no to help, or if you try to give them help, they'll do what my mom was doing in this picture, which was, sort of turning her nose up at it, like not liking the help that they're receiving. Or they may try to. I've seen people who may fire home health aides, the caregiver brings in, hires a home health aide to care for someone during the day, and then the person who's receiving the care fires them, sends them home. Um, and so the care receiver, in order to save face, in order to save their sense of self and be independent, can actually get very angry and be very resentful. And that's where we get into a situation where people are trying hard to fight their disability, to fight their illness, to fight the limitations that aging have imposed on them. But what they do instead of fighting the aging or the illness is they wind up fighting their caregivers. Like if they can push the caregivers away and prove to themselves that they don't need a caregiver, then that's a way for them to prove that the aging and the illness are not really a bother to them. And so that's where it can get kind of conflictual between the caregiver and the care receiver. Um, I see another comment in the chat. I just want to make sure I get to it. Anthony says, going back to your list, pride, I believe, is at the core of all. And I think that's a lot of it, Anthony. And then the other part of it is people who really don't want to be a burden. It's not just a matter of pride, but they don't want to hurt you by burdening you. And so they're trying to spare you. They're trying to protect you by not being a burden. So I think it's between pride and that, I think it explains a lot of why people may not accept help. Any thoughts about anything on this slide about
Can I
minimization? Please
can I
go
share
ahead,
a little
Teresa.
story?
Yeah, go ahead,
So
Teresa.
I've shared this story many times because it was the moment. I'm a Christian, so it was the moment that I realized that I wasn't in this on this journey by myself when it came to caring for my husband. He it seems like every 6 months he would say to me he was going to leave. And I know that sounds strange to say, but we would just be going about our normal business and I'd see boxes and he'd say, I'm going to leave. I'm going to pack up my stuff and put it in storage. I said, well, where are you going? He didn't really know where he was going, but he was determined that he was going to leave. And then we would get into an argument about it. And eventually the argument would end. And then in 6 months, the same thing would happen again. And I started to get really irritated by it because I didn't know what was causing this. And I have to be honest, I was insulted too after all I had put into trying to take care of him that he would just keep trying to leave. And then the Holy Spirit, because I'm a Christian, I prayed about it, and the Holy Spirit told me he doesn't want to leave. He wanted me to let him know I wanted him to stay. Well, anyway, I went to my husband and I said, you're not going anywhere. And if you go, I'm going with you. And I'm calling everybody and telling them you can't go unless I can come too. And he's never, ever, ever said he was going to leave again after that day. I always used to laugh about that with him, about how he kept trying to leave, but he knew he wasn't going to go anywhere without me. He just wanted, I guess, on some level, he probably didn't even understand. He wanted to know that I was here because I wanted to be here, and I was here because I loved him, and I wasn't trying to. I wasn't that he wasn't a burden. So that's what this reminds me of. He probably felt like he was being a burden to me, and anyway, I wanted to share that story. I hope it inspires and encourages someone.
Teresa, that's a great story and some great insights there. Um, and so I think your husband, you figured out what was going on with your husband, and you made him feel valued. You made him feel that he wasn't a burden, and that you really proved to him that you were in this together. This wasn't something simply happening to him, and you were putting up with it, but that this was something happening to the two of you, and you were in this together. And when you can emphasize that with somebody, I'm with you, I'm here with you, I'm in this with you. Illness doesn't happen to an individual, it happens to a family. Then that helps them feel like, okay, we're in this together. How are we going to figure this out together, rather than fight you on what's going on. So thank you for sharing that story.
And Pastor Joyce is on the call. Last month, she shared with us those 7 words. Remember, this is where I want to be. She shared that with us last month, and how she said that.
Those are great words. Any other thoughts about this slide before I go on? Okay. All right. So I think with this question, I think Teresa just started answering it. The question is, how do we help those who need care to accept help without fearing that they will lose who they are in the process? So Teresa you gave one answer. Do other people have other answers about how do you help? How do we help people who they absolutely need care? They really can't function on their own. They need care, but how do we help them accept that care without feeling that they're going to lose who they are?
Sometimes like I care for my husband, and sometimes he really shouldn't drive a lot, but sometimes I'll let him drive, um, so that he feels like he can still be doing something. I mean,
I,
I probably wouldn't let him drive far, far away, but maybe a short jaunt around Baltimore.
I think I like that story, Barbara, because you understand that he needs to do things. He needs to feel like he's still capable. He doesn't want to just be a passenger in the car of life. He wants to get behind the wheel and feel like he can still go places. He still is, he still is a capable man. And I'm glad that you understand that about him, and within limits, right? You don't take him out on 95 or on the Beltway. I mean, you're not doing anything like that, but you're taking him to maybe to places where he can drive safely and where you're with him and steadying him if he's a little bit shaky behind the wheel. Good for you. Cheryl Wright wrote, "I love the layers in the story and the journey to acceptance." And I think, Cheryl, you were referring to Teresa's story, but I think what your comment here refers to all these different stories, the journey to acceptance. And it is a journey, and it's not always a smooth journey. It could be a bumpy road, but hopefully people get there. Celia says, being a caregiver at at both ends of the spectrum, I let them do until they can't and realize they need help. And I would say to you, Celia, that makes sense. But, and here's the but, um, my mom didn't like to use her walker. And if I basically allowed her not to use her walker, then she might fall. And if she fell on occasion, one time she fell in the middle of the street and she broke her tailbone in three places. And she was in terrible pain. And then she was basically bedbound for the next 6 weeks. And that was a real terrible time for her and a terrible time for me. And I'm glad you added within reason because this is exactly right. We can let people do what they can, taking into account that we don't want them to risk their safety too much, but we want to give them the opportunity to do things. We don't want to take over everything. We don't want to take all their roles away. We don't want to make them feel less than. We want to help them be as capable as they can be. We want to support their capabilities, but we also want to make sure that they are safe. So, as Barbara was saying about her husband, she'll let him drive in certain places where he has the capability of driving, but maybe not drive in other places where it might pose a safety risk. But thank you for that comment, Celia. Okay. All right. So what we're talking about here, I think Celia just and a number of you already began to talk to really point to this idea here, and that is we don't want to go up against the person to make them receive care. We somehow want to ally with that person. We want to walk with them. We don't want to be against them. And so here are some things that you might say, especially if you're taking care of a parent, for instance. I want to help you live as you prefer as you get older. You don't want to tell a parent you can't live in that house anymore. We got to get you out of this house. We got to get you into an apartment. We got to get you into a facility. A parent's going to dig their heels in. Instead, we want to have a conversation where we're on their side. I want to help you live as you prefer as you get older. And I'm going to support you to do that. And maybe sometimes we even have to go so far as to say, I have no interest in taking over your life. I'm not about to take away your independence. I don't want to control you. I want you to have your life. I don't want to control your life. And that, again, if you're talking with a parent, if you prefer to stay in your own house, let's talk about how I can help you make that possible. I'm going to ally with you on the goal that you have. You want to stay in your house? Let's figure out a way that I can help you make that possible. Or here's another possible way of allying. You took good care of me as I was growing up. It is important to me to be able to give back to you now, just as you did for your parents, my grandparents, as they were getting older. So you can adapt this to think about you took good care of me at various times in our marriage, and now I have the opportunity to give back to you, and I want that opportunity. I want to give back to you some of the love that you gave to me. I worked with a couple of years ago where there was a husband was waiting. His wife was bedbound. She had terrible pain. She really couldn't function. He had to do everything for her, and he basically what he said to me is, I had it. He said I was an alcoholic for many years. My wife used to go and pull me out of the bar and bring me home, and because of her, I eventually got sober, and now she helped me basically save me from dying of alcoholism. And now I have the opportunity to give back to her by taking care of her as she's disabled. And this is very important for me to do this. So people have this very strong motivation of giving back. And I think if we say that to somebody, you gave to me, I want to give back to you, it sometimes helps that person receive our care better. So what are your thoughts about some of the things that's on this slide, some of these different quotes I have here?
I raised my hand because I wanted to share about I was thinking about my aunt. I cared for my aunt as well, and the difference with her was that we had conversations early. I knew that she was in her 90s and I knew that she had health problems. So I asked her, how do you want to be cared for? We had conversations before she needed it. I asked her, how do you want me to approach you when the time comes when you can't drive anymore? Because there may come a time when you can't. Do you want me just to tell you? Are you gonna argue or resist? And we had the conversation. So when the time came, I promised her I would not tell her she couldn't drive anymore until I was absolutely sure it wasn't safe for her to drive anymore. And she promised she would believe me. And she did. I told her, I don't think it's safe to drive anymore. And I think it took a couple of more trips, maybe a week. And then one day she just handed me the car keys and said, here you go. I said, thank you.
Well, I mean, Teresa, it's best to have these, as you say, it's best to have these conversations early. And you allied with your aunt early. You basically said, how do I help you live the way you want? Not that,
Right,
it's not like I want to make you live the way I want. How do I help you live the way you want?
right.
Right. Any other thoughts about anything on this slide? Okay. All right. And then ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, this as the serenity prayer always says, you got to accept the things that we cannot change. And that means that it may not always be possible to preserve the dignity of the person we're caring for and at the same time ensure their safety. That Celia talking about giving people the opportunity to do what they can until they can't. And we have to always find that balance between preserving their dignity and ensuring their safety. You have to distinguish in your mind what are the issues that are really, really the crucial safety issues, and those are the front burner issues. And the other issues that maybe you don't want to make a big deal about, you can put on the back burner and wait until the person you're caring for is ready. So driving is often an issue where people will say it's not safe for you to drive. I may even have to take the car keys away from you because it's just, may be unsafe for you and for other people, and therefore that's a front burner issue. Whereas for there may be other issues where you're going to give the person as much opportunity to do things on their own and not take away that opportunity from them. And then ultimately, with all the people we're caring for, they're going to make their own choices, even if those choices are bad ones. And we can't force anybody to take on help that may be helpful, because that could damage them in some way. And then the last point I'm going to make here, and then I'm just going to show you a couple more slides, and then we'll open it up for your comments. It's really when people are resisting our help that we really have to make sure we don't take it personally, and that it's not about their rejecting us, but they're trying as best they can to fight their current circumstances, which they don't like. They don't like having disabilities. They don't like being on the receiving end of care. They're And so if they're pushing us away, if they're telling no to us when we offer them care, it's not a commentary on us. It's a commentary on where they are in their lives at this time. So I saw another comment in the chat. I just kind of take a peek at it. And this is from, let me go up a little bit, from Celia. When you have a good relationship, the one who you need to care for, you can work with them. Otherwise, you may need to wait until they get to the point their health demands or they realize they have no choice but to ask for help. And I think that's correct. I think in general, Celia, when we've had a good relationship with the person we're caring for, the caregiving goes better. When that relationship has been a little bit more difficult, when there's not as much trust, there's not enough goodwill, then we may have some difficulty. And as you point out, you have to be more flexible with those folks in helping them come to the place where they realize that they have to ask for help. Any other thoughts? Okay, so I just want to say, as Teresa mentioned, I've written 3 self-help books on family caregiving. Here are the 3 of them. The one on the left is the one Teresa gave away tonight. If you have any interest in getting a copy of it, if your name is not Tika and you didn't win a copy, but you'd like to buy a copy, if you use your phone and click on the QR code here, you can get a discounted copy for 15% off. So that's just if it interests you. Audrey says, not taking it personal is a biggie. I really have had challenges with this one. Audrey, do you want to unmute and talk a little bit more about that if you feel comfortable doing that?
Oh, yes, definitely. Hi, sorry about being late. Definitely, one, I was caregiving for both of my parents and now my husband. And of course, it's more personal with my husband and I. And so having to realize that it's more about his situation than it is about me. But boy, has it kept me in a place of prayer and just praying for more patience and compassion and trying to understand that it really is not about me and that they're not rejecting me.
Yeah, no, that's a hard one. And I think with a spouse, it's going to be especially hard because you're trying to give your spouse your love, and they're basically saying, I don't need that. Get that away.
Right.
I can take care of that. And that hurts. That
It's painful, yes.
Yeah. But I think that you said it better than I did, that they're reacting to their situation. They're not reacting to you. They love. They don't love their situation very much. Any last thoughts before I turn this back to Teresa?
Well, I wanted to share that, but at the moment when you're going through that, it feels like it's directed to you. So what do you do with those feelings? It's really painful. And what I've learned is it's what you tell yourself. Is you have to get really good at self-talk. You got to get really good at telling yourself the things that are true and focusing on the things that are true. Because you may not hear it from that person, right?
Right.
You got to learn how to tell yourself, I'm doing a great job. I've done the best I can. I'm here where other people are not here. So it's what I say to myself, that my voice matters more than any other voice I hear, other than the voice of the Lord, of course. My voice matters more than what anybody else says, what family members think, what my circumstances may be telling me. I know how to speak to myself and tell myself things that are true, that build me up. And that's why self-care is important. Taking time to check in with you, check in with yourself, and to allow yourself to be comforted in those feelings so that they can soften and they don't continue to hurt you, because it can be hurtful, especially when people have a cognitive issue and they can't always, or some other cognitive issue. They don't have to have dementia. My husband has 6 strokes and he had aphasia. So he would say something, but that's not what he meant. He was deaf in one ear. It was a whole situation going on at our house. So I had to really know how to hear what he said and then go back and talk to myself about what he said and make sense of it and decide how much of that is true, how much I need to ignore, and what do I need to say next. It's work being a caregiver. But the more you know yourself, the better you get at talking to yourself, I think the easier it will get. I want Dr. Barry to talk a little bit about that, maybe.
I mean, Teresa, I think you said that so well. I'm not sure I have anything to add to that. I would just say, I mean, I think it sounds like all of us have had this experience of working with a person who's receiving care to try to understand them, how they're reacting to their situation, and to not and to encourage them to receive our care because we mean to help them and we don't feel burdened by them. It's not always easy sometimes, but that doesn't mean we feel burdened by them. And so we encourage them, we reassure them, we give them as much opportunity to do things for themselves. And then when it comes to safety, we step in and basically said, you really got to do this. I'm sorry, but you really got to do this. You really got to give me the car keys. So I think this is a great topic. We all have to deal with this in our own relationships with our care receivers. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it back to Teresa. And I know she has some breakout room exercise in mind for you. Really a pleasure to talk with all of you tonight. Thank you so much for participating, sharing as much of your own stories as you can.